What's going on, guys? So in this video we're going to be going in depth on a fragrance that I put off getting for a long time. I'd always heard that it was basically a niche version of one of my all-time favorite, most nostalgic scents that just screams 90s in a bottle to me, reminds me of my childhood, and upon the first sniff it almost took my breath away because while not one-to-one, it definitely smells like the niche version of Tommy by Tommy Hilfiger. We're talking about Fougères Marine from Montale. So stay tuned. So like I was saying before we jump into the scent on Fougères Marine specifically, here's my 30 ml of Tommy cologne that's almost empty. I've had many bottles of Tommy by Tommy Hilfiger over the years. I do have another 50 ml. I have another 30 ml. I always have a bottle, at least a small bottle, of Tommy by Tommy Hilfiger. Now this is classically known to be a little bit bitter green, fresh spicy. There's a little bit of citrus. There's a little touch of powder, but the woody nature doesn't really take over the fragrance till later, but there's a lot of almost earthy green tones to it, but still a lot of fresh, spicy green tones as well. This is a scent that can do both casual and dressy occasions. While I wouldn't go with the most dressy of occasions, you know, polo and Oxford style, semi-casual type of situations, it's a superstar for that, as well as very casual. Like I said, all-time great. The only problem is performance leaves a lot to be desired. For me, it's, you know, like a 2 to 3 hour fragrance before it fades into a faint skin scent. Enter Fougères Marine. I'll have the notes on screen. As you can see, it is a more simplistic note breakdown. It is not exactly the same note breakdown as Tommy by Tommy Hilfiger, but what you're going to get from this one in the opening is you're going to smell this oak moss, patchouli, seawater combo. It's watery and aquatic, very watery, not salty sea breeze, marine type of aquatic. It's more a watery, juicy feel. This earthy green, spicy tone with a little touch of green freshness because the geranium gives off this minty feel. And like I said, there's a lot of oak moss here. So there's your green spice, you add some geranium to add some minty freshness, and you have a fresh, spicy green feel at the top, which is very relatable between the two of these. Like I said, while not one-to-one, I would say Fougères Marine is every bit of 80-85% of Tommy by Tommy Hilfiger, but it does the style better overall because the quality is a bit better here. It's more believable. The lavender isn't overdone. It does add a bright aromatic nature. Doesn't really make it a super soapy shower gel scent. There's a little bit of soapiness going on here, but not where I would equate it to be specifically a shower gel scent because of the oak moss. That herbaceous green feel kind of grounds the scent because the lavender and the seawater could take it heavily into that shower gel vibe if they didn't have a lot of oak moss going on here. The muskiness is nice and clean and smooth. The patchouli, as it starts to dry down, adds a nice lightly earthy but more creamy tone to the fragrance, and it stays very watery and clean and musky. So the oak moss is actually, I find, at the top with the geranium and the lavender, and what you're left with as it dries down, you still get that seawater. That seawater note hangs out the whole way through with some muskiness and some creamy patchouli. Like I said, there's nothing chocolatey about the patchouli. It's not inherently earthy. There's a little bit of an earthy tone, but nothing that makes anything about the scent profile dirty or very dark. Like I said, it just adds this nice creamy tone to it. It's actually a lovely, lovely scent. Now, admittedly, as they dry down, they're not as similar in scent profile as they are in the opening in the heart. Opening in the heart, this is a dead ringer as the niche version of this. But in the dry downs, that's when they kind of go their separate ways, and the relatability, though still there faintly, it becomes a faint relation in scent profile. That's where they greatly differ, is the further you get into the dry down, the more they veer off into separate paths. But this is a beautiful fragrance. I've been loving this one. It was my scent of the day at the recording of this, as a matter of fact. And The performance has been fan-frickin-tastic, which we will touch on here in just a moment. But if you haven't tried this one yet, it's worthy of a sample. Not everybody's going to love it. It might be too boring for some. You can find this one for a great price. I got a tester, which is why the pin's going through the atomizer head instead of being a stopper on the neck. Paid 50 some odd dollars from FragranceNet after the 37% off coupon code. That's a great price for this because the quality's there. Not the highest end of luxury scents out there, but definitely a cut above run-of-the-mill designers for sure. It's definitely a cut above into that, higher end territory. Not the top tier of the high end, but like I said, better than designer quality for the most part. And the performance matches it. 50 some odd dollars for this fragrance. If you're a fan of this, you should really try this because this can fix any of the performance issues you had with this. Like I said, not one-to-one with one another, but the opening, they're unmistakably close to each other. Now, in regards to performance, that's where this thing shines. This is where it separates itself because the longevity for me has been 8+ hours every single time I've sprayed it on my skin. Sometimes it falls in the 9 to 10 hour range. Sometimes it's about 8 hours before it falls off. That's why I say the safe number to put on this is 8+ hours in longevity. It does its job. The sweet spot for me with any and all fragrances is 6 to 8 hours. I don't need more. I prefer not to get less, but I don't mind getting less. I wear 2 to 3 hour fragrances for different situations too. But this one falls to the top end of my wheelhouse and beyond. So while not a beast of a fragrance, it's definitely above average in longevity. Projection, nothing crazy here. It is surprisingly sneaky strong at first. Like the first hour, it's actually pretty stout. The second hour, still very pronounced, out there, you know what I mean? Still radiating off the skin, but not heavy beyond arm's reach type of stuff. This is a bit more subdued at that point. I would say maybe arm's reach into the second hour. And then what you're left with the sillage is actually moderate. So it doesn't calm down from the projection too heavily to where it's a real close skin scent type of sillage. No, no, no. It's not on the mild side. It's more on the moderate side. Whereas it still has this strength to it coming off of the skin. It's not too strong when you smell it directly off of skin, but it's nice and flowy and airy. I think the muskiness mixed with the lavender, adding that aromatic touch, and this seawater note keeps it fresh and light enough. Like I said, not the strongest of trails, but it's distinctively noticeable. My wife told me earlier when we went and have lunch, she was walking behind me. She was a few feet behind me, and she's like, "Ooh, it smells like you just sprayed it." And it was, like 4 hours into me wearing 3-4 hours into me wearing the fragrance at that point. So performance is no issue here. It's right in that average to slightly above average projection range in the first hour, then average, moderate, arm's length type of stuff for the second hour. Sillage is more moderate, so you're getting pretty good scent strength the entire life of the fragrance with above average longevity. My final thoughts on Fougères Marine from Montale. Where have you been all my life? That's kind of how I feel about it. Mwah. This is such a great fragrance. Without being a one-to-one copy, it doesn't make it too redundant. I can still get joy out of Tommy Cologne because while they're extremely similar in the opening and in the heart, they're not one-to-one with one another. Like I said, they kind of veer off into different paths as they dry down. So yes, if you're a fan of Tommy by Tommy Cologne, I absolutely think you should try this. If you never liked Tommy Cologne, you'll probably never like this. There's a chance you will, but it's definitely sample worthy. Not really blind buy safe unless this is nostalgic for you like it is for me. Because this was the reason I bring up the nostalgia factor here is that's the first fragrance in my life I ever sought after. I wanted this. I asked for this as a Christmas present in the 6th grade. I'll never forget because Tommy had blew up at that point. Everybody was wearing Tommy Hilfiger. It was a thing. I loved the fragrance. I wanted to have the fragrance. It was the first fragrance I ever requested as a gift from my parents. So strong 90s nostalgic ties for me. So when I finally got my nose on this, I fell in love. For me personally, this is a 9 out of 10 fragrance. It's outstanding.
What?
Maybe not a 9 out of 10 for you, but this is my opinion. This is how I feel about this fragrance.
Yeah!
Because I have such a strong love for this, it makes me have an even stronger love for this because you get a higher quality, a little bit more diversity to the scent profile, and the performance is night and day different. So yeah, for me, it's a 9 out of 10. Well, that's my thoughts and feelings on Fougères Marine from Montale. And until next time, do me a real quick favor. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. I do appreciate all the feedback. And I love hearing from you guys. I know in my first impression, I joked and said 10 because I never give a 10. I don't believe a 10 exists. This is almost the perfect fragrance for me. That's why it's a 9 out of 10, not a 9.5. There's very few fragrances I've ever given a 9.5. Danger Pour Homme. Danger Parfum Pour Homme is the first one that comes to mind from Roger Parfums. That's almost a perfect fragrance too. But this, it just suits my taste. I'm going to get so much wear out of this. It's unreal. Anytime I'm going to be in a situation where I'm wearing a polo style shirt, this is going to be the first fragrance I think of because prior, this was the first fragrance I think of. That's why there's barely anything left in the bottle. But and I'll still wear that, don't get me wrong, but this is just the better version of Tommy Cologne. And until next time, I will say if you get your hands on Fougères Marine from Montale and you give it a spray now, I'm extremely confident you'll thank me later if you're a fan of Tommy. Have a good one, guys.